Now we're in trouble.
Good to go.
Good to go.
Good to go. Hurricane Helene was more than just a headline for my family. On the morning of Friday, September 27th, my daughter, who lived in northeast Asheville, had a hole in her roof and her car was under a pile of trees and power lines. The roads were destroyed and it took 6 days for me to be able to drive up there and pick her up. She was fine. A couple weeks later, on October 15th, I attended a radio class taught by Radio Made Easy's Evan Dixon. He repeatedly mentioned ongoing work being done giving first responders and affected inhabitants ham radios so they could leverage the Mount Mitchell repeater. I later learned that the person responsible for keeping that repeater running and passing messages was Dan Gitro. He played a crucial role in emergency communications in the recovery efforts after Hurricane Helene, ensuring first responders, relief teams, and families had a way to stay connected when traditional comms failed. His dedication to maintaining vital communication infrastructure has made a real impact in disaster response efforts. He saved lives. Today, Dan will share his firsthand experiences from the aftermath of Hurricane Helene, offering valuable insights on the challenges and solutions that come with providing emergency communications in a crisis. Present Dan, K2DMG.
Good morning. Thank you for having me here in Monroe today. My name is Dan. My call sign's K2DMG. I live up in Mooresville, North Carolina, which is about 20 miles directly north of the city of Charlotte. I've done a few of these, but I did a little PowerPoint for this one just so I could stay on topic and not get too far off track like I sometimes do. So we'll go through that. It's not long, so don't think we're going to sit here for hours and go through a PowerPoint. I don't like them probably just as much as you, but they do keep us on track. So the morning that I started doing this was a Saturday morning after the hurricane came through our area. Where we are in the Piedmont of North Carolina, we had effects of the storm with rain and light winds. But as you know, a simple 100-mile drive to the west of us was devastating, and not even 100 miles. It really started in the Catawba County area west, and that's where the majority of the damage west and north and south into the Lake Lenoir area really happened, Chimney Rock area. So Saturday I simply just got on the repeater and said, hey, does anybody need any help? And it was just crazy the amount of people that started to call us saying, hey, can you do this? Can you do this for us? And it got so overwhelming at one point. I had other ham radio operators come in and help me. We were talking on 10 meters just between ourselves, relaying messages while I was, the voice over the repeater. Don NG4D and others were instrumental in those early days of passing messages for family, because there was no way I could do it all just being on the repeater, making phone calls and text messages. So Don and another gentleman by the name of Lee, and I'm sorry, I don't even know Lee's call sign. I've only talked to him a couple times over the radio. Jimmy, who's a part of the club up in Iredell County. We were all instrumental in doing this for everybody. So I want to get that clear. It wasn't just me. I had help. It was just in the background that a lot of people didn't hear. So Saturday was very busy, and I think I got off the radio that day around 11 o'clock at night, maybe midnight, and I was just on a high. I sat there and laid in bed for hours, like, wow, we really did something good today. And I had to be up at like 5 o'clock that next morning because Iredell County EOC invited us to work out of the EOC in a makeshift Aries office. I got there and I was surprised. Yeah, we have an office that says Aries on the door, but there wasn't even a desk. There wasn't a radio, a piece of coax, nothing. So thankfully, I had brought some radio gear with me because I simply didn't know. And a lot of the other guys who were part of Aries, I am now part of the Iredell Aries, brought radios, coax, antennas, and we actually, if you listen to the early days of Sunday, it was not good. We were using some old radios that people had in gator boxes, and we had coax strung together through barrel connectors trying to reach the office we were in. and an antenna out in the parking lot of the EOC. Um, Thankfully, because of my business, I have multiple contacts within the county, along with our Aries and Oxcom director of Iredell County. We have now been working with the county commissioners and emergency management and getting equipment. A large order was just purchased with some money, and we have another large order hopefully going to be going in shortly. And we're going to be building our Aries office because Iredell County, including our sheriff, has realized just how important amateur radio is in emergency situations. So let's get into this quick PowerPoint. I don't want to take up your entire day. I thank you guys for having me, but I know you all want to do something better on a nice 70-degree day we're going to have today. So let's just look at what Hurricane Helene was, 24th through the 29th. It developed as a low pressure system down in the Caribbean. It quickly was updated to a Category 4 hurricane before it reached Florida in the Big Bend area and made landfall in Perry, Florida. That's a really pretty part of Florida, very rural, remote area of Florida. Most people think of Florida, the peninsula side of it, where it's all commercialized. But this part of Florida is a very, very remote area and not a lot of tourism over in that neck of Florida. So it was devastating to them just as much as it was devastating to us. The 27th is when the hurricane started coming up into our area, and it was a low pressure system by then and just dumped astronomical amounts of rain. After I made this, the National Weather Service just this week put out their final report on Hurricane Helene, and the total amount of rain dropped in the Mount Mitchell, Yancey County area was over 30 inches of rain. So if you could just fathom that, and a lot of people don't understand just how and why was it so bad. Well, you got to look at the landscape. Everybody knows that's Appalachia, right? That's a really beautiful spot. But at the highest peak where this 30 inches of rain, I think it was 32.32, I think was the number, amount of rain fell, is at over 6,000 feet. Well, just imagine anything 6,000 feet has to work its way down, and that's exactly what it did when it got to the Chimney Rock area at around 1,500 feet, somewhere in there, Chimney Rock sits. So, and Lake Lenoir. And just imagine mud, water, houses, cars, boxes that go on tractor trailers themselves all came rushing down from 6,000 feet to 1,500 feet. And when we see damage like we have seen, that's why. It wasn't just water, it was everything that came down with it. Last report I saw was 106 confirmed killed here in North Carolina, and there are still people missing. And sadly, unfortunately, those people will probably never be found, just buried under feet and feet of sediment and mud and trees and everything that came down with it. So that's just a quick background of what Hurricane Helene was. I started doing net control on the 28th, that Saturday morning. And little did I know, I want to make this point very clear too. There was another gentleman that was making phone calls before I, and text messages and helping people. He lives in South Carolina. I'm drawing a blank on his call, but he's got a very distinctive, deep, deep voice. So if you ever listen to the Mount Mitchell Repeater, you'll hear him. He's on there quite frequently. And I didn't know that. So he was one of the first guys that started this. So he deserves credit too, along with another gentleman by the name of Lynn. So I put this as a let's discuss because I thought we would talk about the difference between Saturday and Sunday. Saturday was people asking us, hey, can you call my loved one? Can you text message my loved one? And like I said, I went to bed that night on cloud nine. We helped all these people just get their, hey, I'm alive. And in my head, in the very beginning, I'm sitting here saying, what do you mean you're alive? You know, I'm north of Charlotte. Yeah, we got some rain and some wind, but that was it. You know, but little did we know infrastructure was cut off and just how bad it was. Nobody knew how bad it was until a day or two after, you know, when these calls for help started coming in. Cell phone towers went down. The North Carolina Viper system went down. Data was cut through fiber. And that was another big problem in the days leading up when people finally started to clear driveways and get out. They were running over fiber lines, cutting cell phone towers. Uh, Not a lot of people understand how cell phone towers work. It's all fiber. And yeah, they have microwaves and antennas that give you signal, but it's all run by underground fiber. So that all came up and those lines were being destroyed. It was very neat to see in the days later, all the cellular companies that responded with what they call COWs, which are portable cellular towers, and AT&T and FirstNet, which is a first responder network run and managed by AT&T. Um, they have portable drones, and these drones have an umbilical cord that go up from the ground and feed them with power, electricity, and cellular signal. And they go up 200-300 feet in the air and provide cellular coverage. I thought that was super neat. One of the AT&T reps on site up in, I think it was Burnsville, um, was a ham radio operator, and we talked regularly on the repeater, and he was discussing this to me. I tried my best to get up there and meet him, but unfortunately, I wasn't able to get up there. Days leading up to the hurricane, I was out in my backyard and I fell and sprained my left foot here really bad. I could barely walk. And if nobody knows me personally here or online, but anybody that knows me, I've been a first responder my entire adult life, and even started when I was a teenager up in Western New York. It's not me to sit down and talk on a radio during an emergency. I'm out there. So this was kind of my way to feel involved, and it turned out to be much different than what I ever expected it to turn into. But Saturday, let's get back to that. So I remember how I said I get off topic. I just did. Um, that's why I created this. So Saturday, myself, Don, and others, Jimmy, Lee, we made all of these hundreds of phone calls for people. And if you go back and listen to the audio, it's simply amazing. I started doing it just the other day while creating this, and it was neat to hear just how much I had forgot. So it was, and starting to run call signs of people in QRZ of how these people that we were able to help. It was just incredibly heartwarming to be able to do this for people. Sunday, working at the EOC, it worked great. We had a lot of work to do in the beginning to get something up and running, but what we found there was it was better worked out of our homes. Uh, if you have a shack like me, I spent a whole lot of time and money and stuff to get my shack to what I wanted it to be, and I know it worked. I know I have good coax. I know I had decent radios, and it worked better than using an old Yaesu 8800 in the Gator box that's been thrown around that overheated in the first 20 minutes of using it. So it was just better. And so starting Monday, we went back to the house and did what we continued to do. But Sunday was a drastic change. While I still felt good about what we were doing, there was an incident that happened, and I'll get into it. It went from, hey, can you call my loved one, letting them know we're alive, to people from the outside of the affected area saying, hey, we haven't heard from our loved one. Can you send somebody in there to check on them? And at first thought, I was like, yeah, why not? Hey, it's somebody in this area. Can you go check on this loved one for them? And we had many hams that wanted to help and did. They traveled for miles through broken road systems to go check on a loved one. And we're going to get into another call here. I actually got audio to play that I created a little YouTube video for this. And this particular person, his name is Ed. His call sign is N2GE. A very distinctive call sign and distinctive voice. You'll recognize his voice if you're on South Cars at all. You'll immediately recognize this gentleman's voice as soon as I hit the play button here in a little bit. But this particular area he lived is called the Bee Tree neighborhood of Swannanoa. And as we all know, Swannanoa was just absolutely devastated. Well, he lives down here at the bottom of the mountain, and he's got a 3 or 4 mile hill or a road that goes up a mountain where it was just totally wiped away. And on Sunday, I called Ed and said, hey, we have a request in the Bee Tree neighborhood to go check on an elderly gentleman Would you be able to facilitate that? And Ed, being the superstar that he is, said, it's going to take a couple hours to get up there, but I'll do it. I said, all right, Ed, thank you. Just call back when you can. And well, he did call back shortly after and said, hey, Dan, just to let you know, I found a girl that's going to go up the mountain for me. You know, Ed's in his 50s, 60s. I don't know. I've met him. I honestly don't know how old he is, but somewhere in that area. And he recruited this girl to go up the mountain. I said, okay. I didn't think anything of it at the time. And I said, well, he said that he gave her a radio and she will call you when she gets up there and checks on him. I said, perfect. Well, this was sometime in the morning hours. Time went on. I never heard anything. 5 o'clock came, didn't hear anything. About 8, 9 o'clock, I think we packed up at the EOC that night, didn't hear anything. I was up all night. I thought about that poor girl all night. What did I just essentially dispatch her to? Is she even alive? You know, I have no clue. I was up all night thinking about this poor girl. Well, I couldn't get a hold of Ed Monday. So didn't sleep at all Monday. What happened to this girl? Tuesday, I start calling Ed on the radio again. N480X, K2DMG. Finally, he replied, Ed, tell me, what happened to this girl? And, you know, it was tearful because, oh, she's alive and she's fine. The guy's fine. He can't get down the mountain, but he's fine. For 48 hours, I've been stressing about this poor, you know, is it a 16-year-old girl or is it a 40-year-old? I had no idea, you know. So Sunday, I made the decision that night. I go, I'm not going to be responsible for sending somebody. I don't know if it was, like I said, a 16-year-old girl, or was it, you know, a 300-pound lady that was going to climb up the mountain. You know, I had no idea. And I didn't want to be responsible for anybody's well-being that shouldn't be doing what they want to do. What they're going to do by themselves, I have no control over. And I would never try to stop somebody from helping thy neighbor. But I didn't want to be part of that. So talking with the folks at the EOC, who all had contacts with the state DOC, using WinLink and, you know, 40 meters. I think they were on 7232, if I remember correctly. We started emailing the EOC. All right, here's the name, here's the address, here's the phone, here's all the information we have. When it's conducive for you guys to start doing health and welfare, please do. And this was coordinated through them as well. And they agreed to do that. And so we created an email address. It was like irdleoc@gmail, something simple and easy. And we started sending that all off to the state EOC anytime, starting Monday, that we got health and welfare requests. Was it the right decision? You can Monday morning quarterback that decision all day long. But I slept better knowing I didn't send somebody into danger. You know, we're humans, and especially during emergency situations, what do we want to do? Help everybody. You know, I still don't know if it was the right decision. People have called me out online about it. People have called me out on the repeater about it. It is what it is. I slept better at night knowing I wasn't possibly hurting somebody. So that was the difference between Saturday and Sunday. It went from, hey, can you text this person or call this person, to, hey, let's dispatch somebody into the affected area. So it was a big, big change that I, after thinking about, wasn't comfortable with. As I was laying in bed at 2 o'clock in the morning, thinking about that poor girl. So so Monday, as we just talked about, I got ahead of myself. We started going and emailing everything to the EOC. I've never heard from Greg Hauser, who's the SWIC for North Carolina, if they even received them. Did they dispatch people to check these health and welfare info? I have no idea. Once we started doing this, somehow my personal email got put out. And I woke up Monday morning to an inbox probably of 500-600 requests from people from throughout the country looking for their loved ones, because there was, as we all know, there was no communication. The ARRL even got a hold of this, and the ARRL put out my personal email. So once that happened, I, yeah, I still have emails in my email. I'm still going through. There was just some simply I couldn't get to. It was just too much. My wife was helping me, and thankfully I'm able to work from home, and was able to do this. But it was just too much for a single person. It is what it is, though. We did what we did, and I think it all worked out. What did we learn? That was, everybody wants to know. And when I do these, well, what would you change, Dan? What did we learn? Well, I knew what Aries was, right? I had an idea in my head what Oxcom was. Aries is a local level. Right here, we're probably in Monroe. Yeah, we are in Monroe right now. You guys have an Aries group in Union County, I'm sure. It's a local group that works for Union County. You guys support Union County. Can you be called outside if you were requested? I'm sure you could through a mutual aid or something of that sort, but it's primarily meant for Union County. Oxcom. I had this thing in my head that Oxcom was like this greatest thing ever. And they did all these things for amateur radio. And I quickly was slapped right in the face. And I admit it. When I'm wrong, I'm a man. I'm going to admit I was wrong, and I was wrong. Oxcom is a great service, and their primary source, after talking with the Oxcom director for North Carolina, who finally got a hold of me sometime in that first week, was, Dan, we got to stop this. And I said, well, why don't you talk to me about what Oxcom is? And he explained, Dan, the prerequisite to be in Oxcom is to have an amateur radio license. That's it. It's a prerequisite. It doesn't mean that's what we're doing. It doesn't mean that's what we're out in the field with a Kenwood HT talking on a local ham repeater. That's not what we do. We are out there supporting first responders in anything communications wise they may need. And that can be with the North Carolina Viper system. That can be with a local P25 or analog system. They're there to support them in their communications needs, boots on the ground with first responders. It's simply a prerequisite to have an amateur radio license. So here, since 9/11, after Oxcom came out, I thought Oxcom was these great ham radio operators that went out in the field and said, someday when I retire, I want to be Oxcom. I want to be this guy, And little did I know, it's just a prerequisite, who most of them are first responders. Obviously, there's some that aren't, of course, but it was something that I was slapped down a peg, and I was glad to take that slapping. What did we learn about communications during hurricanes? There's nobody's communication that is more invaluable than your own. Don't rely on a North Carolina multi-million, probably into the billions of dollars by now, to be your communications. What did we learn? It went down. Towers were washed away. They ran out of fuel. These are all backed up systems, and they had like 2 days of fuel on board. Some of them not even that. And the one up in Klingman's Peak up on Mount Mitchell, it took days to get to that repeater, just because the mountain roads washed away. They couldn't get to it. So it took days to refill these sites with diesel fuel to bring them up. And just like Oxcom, just like Aries, your communications team is only as good as if they weren't involved in the disaster. And what did we find? They were involved. Oxcom in multiple counties were active at EOCs, but not their members. Not a lot of the members were there because they were dealing with their own emergency. And same with Oxcom. The director of Oxcom in North Carolina lives in Boone, North Carolina, was heavily impacted by the storm and couldn't work as what he wanted to work during the storm. It was a very fascinating conversation with him on the phone Wednesday or Thursday when we finally spoke. But so that's one thing that I think everybody can take away from this is, if you have a Bofang radio, great, it's a great starter radio. Don't don't rely on a simple $25 radio for your emergency. I was talking to that gentleman back there just a few minutes ago before we started. He's got a Motorola 2500 sitting right there. Not that I'm saying everybody should go buy a Motorola radio, but you should buy a radio that you know is going to work. You know that's going to be programmed and work well, provide you good audio. And what we found, if you go back and listen to the archives of this, you can tell a lot of people were on cheap $25 radios and their audio and prove that. You have to have a plan with antennas. Myself, I have tons of antennas at my house, ones that are on my roof and ones that are sitting in the attic. You have to have a backup. I like to have backups of everything. That's just me. It's the way I've always been. Multiple HF radios, multiple VHF, UHF, and HTs. You got to have batteries that are good. Keep them charged, because what did we find? People were without power for a month. They had no way of charging, unless you had a generator. And then we had fuel issues. It was just a compounded problem that we found for those people affected. Not a lot of people think of a disaster hitting in such great magnitude. While it was not a heck of a storm when it got here, by wind-wise, the rain is what caused the issue. And it's one thing to have a town that might be wiped off a map, but this was a whole side of a state. It wasn't just a couple thousand people in Black Mountain. It was the Montreat Dam that failed that took out Black Mountain, type thing. And if you down the Biltmore Castle or house, whatever you want to call it, that whole area wouldn't have been as bad if it wasn't for that dam breakage. And that whole area, if you haven't gone down there even today, is still devastated. It's really sad.
As well as over the mountain.
Oh yeah, yeah. All right, so here's Ed. Let's see there we go. And after my ankle healed, and a lot of people don't know this, but my parents live in central Florida, and another hurricane was coming, Hurricane Milton, and that was projected to be a Category 4 or 5. And my father is a former law enforcement officer, and he's hard-headed like me, and I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying in my house. So anytime a major storm comes, I usually just hightail it down there, because I know after the storm there's going to be cleanup, and I have another generator that he can use if his fails, stuff of that sort. So this was Ed early Saturday morning, and Ed worked at the VA in Asheville, and this clip is probably around 3 or 4 minutes. I'm hoping we'll be able to get through it all as long as the audio is good. I'm going to take this little microphone off, and I'm going to put it over here for the camera. And I'm going to make sure my audio is on. I didn't even test that before this here.
It might go off the TV.
Oh,
I
okay.
I'll turn it up.
But this, he lives on, like I said, the Bee Tree Road neighborhood. He lives at the bottom of the mountain, and you'll hear what happened. And like I said, after my ankle healed a little bit, and I was able to get over there, and I got back from Florida, I made a trip to the Asheville area with a couple $1,000s that I raised, and I went around and supplied supplies to ham radio operators, specifically ones that I had talked to and made a relationship over the radio. So this was early Saturday morning when I started. We might have to restart it because I don't know what my volume level is here. All right, let's pause that and let's figure this out, because a good guy would have done this before. Oh, it might be because we're tied to the TV. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to disconnect from the TV. It's trying to put audio to the TV, I think, because HDMI works that way.
Number 4, Echo, Delta, X-ray, operator Ed,
I'm in the Swananoa area, and from that, I'm on Tree Road. Repeat, I need I need a morgue. I need a notification of a body found in the 1100 block of Tree Road, and that's a Swananoa address. Over.
Okay, QSL, that's the 1100 block of V as in Bravo, V Tree Road, is that correct?
That's all right, it's 2 words. Bravo, Echo, Echo, separation. Tango, Roger, Echo, Echo, Road. Zip code is 287. 28778. That's it. 28778. 1100 block. The body is in the trees across from Tree Christian Church.
Okay, QSL, got that information here. I just want to verify, is it the 1100 block or the 100 block? That's the only part that I missed.
1100. 1100.
Okay, copy that information. The 1100 block of B Tree Road, zip code 28778, and it's across from the V Christian, the V Tree Christian Church for a code 10 fatality stuck in a tree. We're going to do our best to get that out to you, but Buncombe County 911 and EOC are currently offline. So we will try to get that information over to that area, but unfortunately it's probably going to be a while. Once I have confirmation of this information being transmitted back, I will go ahead and give N2GE Ed in Swananoa a call. QSL?
Yeah, Roger, I will not. I am out with a number of the neighbors. We do have access to US 70. The Swananoa is down enough that we do have access to US 70 and R40. But the problem up here is that everybody's running out of gas on their generators, and we're just looking for any survivors.
Yeah, I understand, sir. 100% copy. I hate to pass the news to you, but this is going to be a death toll into the hundreds, if not higher, for western North Carolina and eastern Tennessee. There are areas within the state that are completely gone, and Swananoa is sadly one of those areas. I'm very glad to hear you and your neighbors currently are okay. But Godspeed to you, and we will get this information passed. And until then, stay safe. Ration your food, ration your water, ration your gasoline. It's going to take some time.
Thank you for relaying. I don't know. We have no cell phone signals. There's no infrastructure here. So thank you for relaying that info to ADX.
You're welcome, sir. And I will get that passed along when we're able to get a hold of Buncombe County. I also have some contacts within the state EOC. I will try to get a hold of them as well.
All right, so that is Ed, N4ADX. And if anybody listens, as I said earlier, to South Cars, then you know Ed's voice because he's on there regularly, and he's one of those guys that just has a very distinctive voice. So let's try to get back where we're here. Yep, there we are. So we were not able to get a hold of anybody right away. But there was a female who lives in Weaverville, I believe it was, that was listening to this whole thing. And she went out and found a highway patrolman and relayed the information to the highway patrolman, and it got to him, and he did with his thing, and it took 2 or 3 days, but that unfortunately that deceased individual was finally recovered out of the tree after a couple days. So that just shows the devastation and how things move along during a storm like this. you're out looking for people with a pulse. And unfortunately, you know, living in the United States, we expect somebody to be right there because that's what we were born and raised with. You know, you call 911, or back in the day, the 6-digit or 8-digit number, whatever it was, and they showed up. Well, unfortunately, when you're dealing with something like this, that is not the case. And people have to survive by themselves. And unfortunately, the deceased individuals are sometimes looked over until everybody that could be saved was saved. So that was Ed, great guy. You saw in the photo there that he was out trying to help people in flooded roads, and his truck was destroyed. Got a call from Ed just the other day that somebody, and I didn't ask him, but somebody found out about him and donated a brand new Jeep Gladiator to him. So he's extremely excited about that. He's been going through some problems since the storm. He's a former combat medic, and he's just seen a whole bunch in his life, and worked at the VA in his later years here. And you know, they say PTSD is a real thing, and for him it is. And because it just brought back a bunch for him, and he's in need of some help, and I'm glad he's getting it right now. And that was a great gesture for somebody to give him a brand new truck. So as the days progressed, it started going to, we're getting towards the end here. It started going from a search and rescue, as we all know, to a recovery, and trying to find individuals who didn't survive the storm, and getting supplies to people who were trapped in these hollers and on the mountainsides. That's where, you know, we saw all the stories of the helicopters coming in from all over the country, and the small airports in Cabarrus and Statesville, and I'm sure you guys have one here too, that flew flights out of these little itty bitty airports, dropping food supplies and stuff. And Ed was a big part of that. They had the National Guard at the Harley dealer in Swannanoa, and Ed was a major help down there, distributing food and supplies and water. So in a nutshell, guys, I guess that's it. I ran the net until I went to Milton in Florida to be with my parents, which I think was 11 days. And then a lady by the name of Vicky took over. And I'll be the first one to tell you, I'm a first responder. I am not good at logistics. They hire people like that in fire departments and law enforcement for a reason. That's not us. And she came in and she ran the show when I was gone, and even after I got back, and set up this whole logistics plan with some folks, and it really helped out those folks in those areas up there in Yancey and Avery County. So other than that, unless you have any questions, I guess I'm done. I can play some of these news videos if y'all want to see them, but I'm sure everybody's seen them by now. I put them in there just in case. But I was interviewed by all the local media here. I was contacted by NBC's Today Show. They said, "We're coming to your house, be ready." Well, they never showed. So I guess I was happy with it, because I really didn't want to go national. You know, I have a face for radio, not the camera. So if anybody has any questions, I'll be happy to answer. Go ahead, sir. Vicky was a very passionate person.
I was listening to it over. I've got an app on my iPhone that allows me to monitor various radios, repeaters, and he deserves a medal. I mean, what she was doing was just unbelievable.
Yeah, she was a passionate person. I never met Vicky. We've obviously talked on the phone. We've talked on the radio. Vicky, that's the best word to describe Vicky, passionate. I don't think she would have done good in the beginning, the emergency style stuff. But her tools of logistics were amazing. When you have emergencies like this, while being passionate about something is great, you have to be able to eliminate the emotion part of it. And Vicky got passionate.
Yeah, working with the logistics at the airport.
Oh yeah.
And not only that, but also coordinating inbound vehicular traffic as to what routes to avoid and how to get from A to B.
And it's funny, I didn't know anything about, when I left, there was no such thing as Avery Airport. There was nothing there. And then I came back a week later from Hurricane Milton. There was everybody there. They had people from all over the country that came in to help. It was really amazing. Yeah.
All around the country.
Yeah, there were some pretty important people that showed up, and I'll let them tell their story. But that was pretty neat to see. It really was. Go ahead, sir.
So, where can someone listen to? I know it's archived out there somewhere. Where can someone listen to the traffic? And you said you made a YouTube.
Yep. So Broadcastify is where it's currently archived, and it'll stay there. I think they do something like a year or two on their archives. I should really sit down and just record all of that, at least for when I was there. I'm sure Vicky has done something like that on her side. She's a logistics person and is good with all that. The thought of trying to record all that to me is just above and beyond my head, but maybe my wife can help me or my sons. But yeah, Broadcastify right now is the spot that has it archived. So in the early days, no, it was not Mount Mitchell. It was what they call the Tower of Power over there in Gaston County. Sits on that, I think that 1,500-foot tower, if I'm not mistaken. But it's W4HYP, something like that is the call sign. Just look for the Gaston repeater. It's 145350 on Broadcastify. And I believe it's labeled the Tower of Power, if I'm not mistaken. But and the reason for that is his repeater, that gentleman who runs that, HYP, his repeater was down. And he has Broadcastify in his repeater. But because his was down, he had turned his Broadcastify link over to the Mount Mitchell repeater. And then when Randy was able to get internet service back up, he was able to get Mount Mitchell's repeater back up on Broadcastify. So
Dallas?
Yes, Dallas, North Carolina. Yep.
Did you lose power at any point?
At my house? No.
In hindsight, after the fact, what you experienced and in processing since, are you making any plans to change any of your stations?
It's funny because a company flew me down to the Orlando Ham Fest this year over at Hamcation to talk about this. And what I saw there was amazing. I have a generator at my house, but they have these new battery powered generators. I've never seen these things a day in my life. These things are amazing. And what makes it nice is if you hook an HF radio to a generator, what's it do? It gives you noise. And these people had HF radios set up on these battery powered generators that, are tens of thousands of milliamps. So they run forever. They make zero noise, none. And yes, that is something I'm going after. I would love to get my hands on one. Because if I would have lost power, I could have used my generator, but I would have had a tremendous amount of noise.
And antennas or cables, anything else?
I'm that guy that has all that. I still have the original piece of coax that my cousin gave me when I was like 13 years old. I don't throw stuff away like that. I don't know why. He worked for a radio shop back up in Western New York, and I said, "Hey Bobby, can you get me a 50-foot piece of coax for my CB radio?" And he goes, "I guess." And so he gave it. I still got that same piece of coax today. Don't use it obviously, but I still have it.
You mentioned Aries and Iredell. We all learned about Oxcom the same way through this event. What is Aries' mission in Iredell? We all kind of know what Oxcom's mission is now, but I don't know of Aries yet.
Okay.
Established in Union County, and I was just wondering what do you, in a nutshell, what's the mission of Aries in Iredell County?
I'm going to put Aries in the same category as Oxcom originally in my head. And I'll explain what I mean by that. What does ARES stand for? Amateur Radio Emergency Services. So I always thought that, hey, they were like the local emergency guys if something happened in your county. Well, there's a whole lot more to ARES than I originally thought. You always hear about people doing balloon rallies or bicycle rides or runs. That's all run by ARES. Well, that's not really an emergency, but they support, at least in my county, they support all that. They support the communications for all that. We have a couple portable repeaters that we borrow from another county because we don't have our own. So there's a great coordination between us and the other counties around us to support what we have in our county. But going back to what I now know is most areas in this state are just not funded the way they should be. And it's a statewide problem, I have found out. And there's some counties that don't even have an ARES. And in a situation like this, while most of your members might be down, it only takes a guy and a radio, and I'm living proof of that, to be able to help. So these people need to be funded. I'm thankful that our county has seen that. Our sheriff was just on a radio show the other day and said that we have to continue to fund the ham radio guys, as he called us. Our county has bought us a 7610, couple power supplies, a couple antennas, and we still have a large list. I think that new list is about $13,000 that we've come up with. And you think of, if you're buying a new radio, you buy the new radio and that's all you buy. Why? Because you already have antennas, you have coax and connectors and grounding. We have all that we got to buy. So we're now in the process of doing that.
Years ago, I don't know how many people remember Hurricane Floyd. It came through. I work in television and I produced a 20-minute video post event. And what we discovered was that you need to do is to rally the city managers. And we titled the video, "We Didn't Know You Existed." And I still have a copy of that. We went into downtown Franklin, Virginia, which was underwater. They had nothing. I mean, these people were so stupid, they built the EOC next to the river.
Oh, jeez.
Which has since changed since then. But we went in there with our we had a mobile van with a mast on it. And we were the only modes of communication in and out of there for 2 weeks. But we discovered that the city managers are the ones that need to know you exist.
They control the money.
So that you can get the ball rolling and educate them on the benefits of having you in their back pocket.
Because of my business, I somewhat have a contentious relationship with our county manager. But, she is a professional woman. And likewise, I try to be professional with her. And while we might not see eye to eye on some emergency situations that we all get involved with, when you're a first responder, she does see that we should exist in the amateur world. So it's great that we have her on our side now and the county commissioners, because, the county commissioners weren't there to give us the money to do this, then we would be dead in the water.
It's all about awareness. They don't know who we are, what we do, and that we're even there.
That's right.
And you got to open that door first.
I agree, 100%. Go ahead. I think you had something.
I remember starting to listen to the repeater. It was in the morning. I thought it was a Saturday morning, but it's a couple of days after the storm. And it was shortly before 9 o'clock when I was listening. And operations were going to formally start at 9 again that morning. And the first thing that came on was, and I don't know if it was you or someone else, or a couple of operators on, but whoever it was, they were reading a letter. I thought they were reading a letter that came from FEMA and Oxcom saying stop with the welfare checks.
Yeah.
And I thought it was kind of cheeky at the time.
I think that was Monday.
On the other hand, I thought, I can understand why they're doing that.
Yeah.
And
So
I think that, and I just want to say this, or I'll lose my train of thought. It seems that if you're going to put together a local plan, that's, not for kind of a retail level of communications in an emergency situation like this, not involving areas or Oxcom, that better have pre-established a liaison with the EOC, with the sheriff's department, with the police.
Yep.
To pass off that information, because from what you're telling me, you really don't want to be in a position of sending someone out.
yeah, I mean, personally, I did not after thinking about it, and that poor girl, that I just call her poor girl because I have no idea who she is. This turned real political real fast, and I don't want to get into politics, but you brought it up, so let's talk about it. So Sunday we were operating in the EOC, and what I didn't know was our Oxcom guy Dennis was getting emails from Oxcom and from the state saying, "What are you all doing? Stop! Give us every record you have." And so I was kind of the voice at that time. So they came into me and said, "What do you want to do? They're saying this, and you're the one that put this together. Let's figure it out." And if you know me personally, you don't back me into a corner because I'm going to fight. And I felt backed into a corner, and I said, "We're going to continue, and they can go kick rocks." And I provided nothing. We did make copies of notes that day. So did they do it behind my back? Maybe. But they've never admitted it to me. So, there was nothing from any organized group at that time. Mount Mitchell, as we know, is the highest peak with one of the best repeaters in the state on it. Why didn't they come in? If you know anything about emergency management in this state, it's broken up into 3 sections. You got the Western District Branch, the Central District Branch, and the Eastern District Branch. The Western District Branch is in Hickory. Why was it Tuesday or Wednesday before they even opened it? Where were they?
Well, my first reaction to hearing that message was, sounds like somebody's toes got stepped.
Yeah. So politics got involved. As I said, don't back me into a corner because you done lost me at that point. If you want to talk like gentlemen, let's have a conversation. So
there was a conversation on the repeater about they were short on fuel, and the neighboring county had fuel.
Sorry.
But they couldn't get it because of politics.
Who was short on fuel?
One of the areas up there, they were talking, I don't remember exactly who, but they were getting low on fuel. Yeah, but the neighboring jurisdiction had it, but they wouldn't give it to them because they weren't on the approved vendor list.
gotcha. And here's the thing. Again, we live in America. If we want something, we either get on our phone to go to Amazon, and the Amazon truck in their electric truck brings it later that day, or we go to the store and buy it. Example, fuel. People have to realize there's plans that are set up that in an emergency, you aren't on that plan and you are to fend for yourself. That's what this was. You are now fending for yourself. And it doesn't matter if you were a county or an individual, you were by yourself until things got to a point where they could start helping everybody equally. And, I heard that particular story, and in my head, I just said, well, you're a county. If you didn't have supplies, that's your own fault. You have a tax base.
Bureaucracy.
Yep. Go ahead, sir.
Did anybody ever mention a organization called CERT?
So there were many CERT teams that formed. For example, this Beechtree neighborhood where Ed lived. There's another gentleman up there too, and I don't know why I'm drawing a blank on his name, but this guy's really smart. and he'll talk your ear off. But he has a huge cache of radios. So what he did was he went to everybody in the community and gave him Bofang radios. And so they created their own like mini a neighborhood CERT team, where they were helping individuals by themselves without the help of the fire department or whatever. But as for a town or a municipality CERT team, like you see real heavy in Florida, no, there was no mention of it that I ever heard.
Because if you're in CERT, you don't self-report, which is what this guy did. And you work directly with the first responder.
Yep.
So that when you do a search and rescue or anything like that, you're doing it at the request of the real first responders.
Yep.
And you're giving them information back.
And if you go on, there's 100 counties in the state. I guarantee if you go on 95 of those counties' website, you will not see a single word that says CERT. The only, like in my county, you type in Iredell County CERT, guess what you get? Sheriff's Office. Because they have a CERT team, which is their SWAT team, and it's spelled SERT. So the CERT is not popular in the state.
Yeah, one of the first things that they tell you in there is you got to take care of yourself first. And it's not 3 days of supplies, it's 3 weeks.
Mhm.
And then we've got a statewide CERT person that will then send us emails or.
Where are you from? Because you're not from here.
Yes, I am, Union County.
Really? Do you guys have a CERT team here?
We did.
Oh, you are? Okay. So that program manager knows it's not big in the state.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, we know
Our
that.
biggest thing is trying to establish relationships. Because through COVID, they were told never use a volunteer again.
Yeah.
We don't know how to use volunteers. You know, we can use paid staff because we can make them follow our rules.
Yep.
And most of the volunteers were elderly and don't want to go out and get COVID.
Yep.
So now they're slightly interested in maybe having us work a shelter management thing, maybe, but that's it.
And that is actually Aries. That's what Aries is. So if you guys want to call it CERT here, by all means, go right ahead, but that's Aries. Working shelters.
Our club, Tom, is with our UCAR, Union Canyon Radio. Tom is actually spearheading trying to get a local plan for the retail level communication,
yep,
like you did through our club, because we don't have Aries that I know of. And our CERT team, we do training, we're connected and all that, but all of our most of our training is still 90% how to take care of yourself, your family, and your neighbor in an unactivated status, because the system is not ready for, you know,
yep,
they still don't know how to do it with volunteers. You say we have volunteers to help, and they're like, thank you very much, stay over there.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
And I get it. They don't have time to learn new things in emergency. Nobody does. But we're working on it slowly. But that's why we're very interested in this level of the things you did, because that is a need we know we can help with. And I'm Air Force. I know if you get $1 from somebody in a bureaucracy, then all of their rules apply to you because you took the $1.
Yep. You're
so I'm real
hesitant.
I love to take the $1. You take what the rules are first.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna.
And believe me, we're fighting that where I live. I mean, we have this Aries office. We have zero access to it. Our Oxcom guy, who's approved by the state, doesn't have access to our Oxcom office. So, I mean, we understand. I mean, what's the Oxcom office? A room with a rug in it. You know, I mean, it's nothing right now. Yeah.
We got about 6 or 8 requests from the state, sir, to go up there and do things.
Warehouse, yeah.
Warehouse
ops.
The one that I would have loved to done was lifting 50-pound bales of hay and feeding horses. I do that every day anyway.
Yep.
But unfortunately, I couldn't take any of them because we had an election going on, and I'm a chief judge, so
Gotcha.
from beginning of October till November 6th, I was busy every day.
Yep. Yep.
But none of the requests that came was for any radio communication. That really.
That's what CERT is. I mean, it's people with radios, you know,
Yeah.
and same with Aries.
And if we could overlay that and get them to understand that our primary use would be to set up a small little radio group that was 6 to 8 CERT people with one guy setting up a gigantic antenna to be able to transmit it out, and then the rest of them going around explaining what the problems were and getting that to first responders, so that then they can look at the whole picture and decide what is the most important thing to get first.
You know, if you look at other states, Florida, California, you know, two totally different dynamic of states, a conservative state and a very liberal state. They work really good with amateur radio. So this talk of that I hear, you know, this is North Carolina. We do things different here. Well, you do, and you do it wrong. Because here's the case in point to Florida and California, 2,000 miles away from each other, totally different politics, and they work well with amateur radio. State of Florida, they have a system called the SARnet. It's a UHF-based system, and they have a repeater damn near in every county, and it's tied in with microwaves. It's a statewide system. So you could talk from Key West on an HT to a guy in Pensacola on an HT. It's completely run by the state. It's on the state DOT towers. It's a fabulous system. And to think we could have something like that here, because we have a statewide system called Viper. If we can if we could tie it in, just amazing how amazing that would be in times of an emergency like we just dealt with, where you might lose one tower or two towers. You still have communication, not trying to get the one antenna that sits at 6,000 feet.
Wherever they are.
To make the ladder glad.
So,
Oh, yeah,
I
can only rent one now.
System, I heard talk of that started up, you start referring everyone to 211 for, I think that's where they wanted the health and welfare check.
Health and welfare, and anybody that wanted to come and volunteer.
Right. I kind of got the impression that was created on the fly.
It was.
For that purpose.
It was. Yep. And to this day, I don't know if it worked. Never been able to get an answer on it. You know, people came on the repeater. If you go back and listen, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, people were driving here from all over the country. They were listening on Echolink or Broadcastify, and they now were just coming here with supplies. What am I supposed to tell them when they get into the state? Oh yeah, now you got to call 211. You know, at night, if you guys listened at night, starting at 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock every night, I went through every single county in the West, their social media pages and their websites. Every single county put out an update to that day's activities, what we were expecting, how can you do this, how can you do that. I read every single county. It took me about an hour and a half every night. And, you know, so I knew the next morning what the needs were for that county, because they just talked about it that night. So when these people started coming in from the state, calling on the repeater, hey, I just arrived here from Iowa, I got a trailer full of this. Well, you know what? This county said they needed these types of supplies. If you have them, go to this county. I'm not going to sit there and tell you to call 211.
About the guys with the mules.
Oh yeah, so I think they were out of like Tennessee or something. Was it New Mexico? Okay, they showed up and they were in Statesville. I mean, yeah, I mean, but just think about that. Here we are in 2024 at the time. We're using mules to get to places because we can't get there, even with our great off-road 4x4 systems that we have. We're using mules. And that was what was needed to get to some of these areas, you know. So.
Can you speak to how prominent or not GMRS was in satellite phones, satellite communication?
So I know nothing about satellite phones. I heard nothing about it the entire time. Starlink. Starlink.
Yep.
Yep. That, every EOC was screaming for them. And I was really lucky. When I went down to Milton, I met a ham radio operator in the middle of the night. He was the guy that reached out to me. His company's the one that flew me down to Hamcation later, earlier this year. I mean, he's like, I got a Starlink for you. This guy handed me a brand new in the box Starlink satellite. So I have Starlink now, and I can tell you this is a game changer. You might have to pay a few bucks extra than what you pay Spectrum every month, but you'll be happy you have that up and running when the next one
Have
comes.
you heard the latest development that Elon's pushing?
What's that?
Being able to make Starlink phone calls
Yeah,
from your iPhone.
I know T-Mobile has already launched it. Now it's coming to Verizon, so I'll be really happy when it comes to FirstNet and AT&T, because I have FirstNet.
Is that technology on the cell phone tower?
It works independent from,
Independent.
yeah, it's
It
independent.
talks to,
Yeah.
phone talks to
The
the satellite.
satellite, yep.
Because the phones have a GPS antenna.
Yep.
So they've already got a wait.
Yeah.
I also heard there's another company that has been working on this similar technology. So it sounds like there's gonna be multiple choices with cell phone to satellite.
It's going to be a game changer. It really will. Like when you guys don't know, but I'm a certified law enforcement officer. I work for the Iredell County Sheriff's as a deputy, and I've left because my business grew. But there's places in Iredell County up like Fox Mountain that there's nothing. So one specific night after this technology launched, I went up Fox Mountain where I was working that section of the county, and I stood outside, and the screen pops up. It locks onto 3 satellites, and for AT&T, it's only text messaging at this point, not phone calls. But I was able to text our 911 center, and it's only for AT&T right now. And first, it's only 911 right now. But it was amazing that my phone says no signal, but I'm texting 911. I thought it was really cool.
What's the brand or the technology
What's that?
of the package that allows?
So I have a Samsung S24, and that's what it was on. So I mean, I know it's on iPhone too, but it's built right into the phone. Yep. If you go into no service and you try to text somebody, it'll pop. That's how it worked. It popped up automatically. Do you want to try to lock onto a satellite?
I think it's an iPhone 14 and above.
And
on-
you're
on-
talking
On
on
the current
your
OS.
standard SMS tool?
Yep. It's built right in the phone. Yep. But you must be in no service for that to pop up. So if you have any sort of service, it will not automatically pop up. Now, I believe on the iPhone, because I don't have an iPhone, I used to. My old company phone was the sheriff's office was an iPhone. There's a test that you can do. It's in the settings. Yeah, you might have it up right now.
I think if you turn it off, the SOS emergency call.
But
Show up.
But as far as I know, on Samsung, there's no test. It just automatically
Even
popped up.
any cell phone, even if it's locked, you can do an emergency.
Oh yeah, that's been like that for years. Yeah.
When I left, somebody was talking about 211.
Yes.
That is currently used for Goodwill. And anywhere in the state of North Carolina, you dial 211, it will take you to the local Goodwill.
No.
So we've used every 11, because we've got 911, 811.
Yeah.
711, 611. I can tell you what they all are because I worked on all these projects when I was working for them.
Gotcha. Okay.
So there is no more available for anything unless they would say, Goodwill would give it up and let us use it during an emergency.
So did the state commandeer that from Goodwill then at that point? Is that the way that worked?
PUC told us that we would do 211.
Okay. I was just going to address the GMRS thing, but he just stepped out for a sec. But, who doesn't have a GMRS license? Back when I got into amateur radio, it wasn't for personal communications. They've since switched to that. It was business fed communications back then. But my father and I share a license, and I guess it has its place, but
I think it's frustrating with GMRS now, to change the rules that you can't link them.
yes, correct.
And that's,
But you can't have a repeater.
Yes.
You can't have a repeater.
oh yeah, I'm building. it
Limited to
now.
50 watts, and the antenna height cannot be above 30 or 50 feet. Yeah.
Recommending get rid of that.
What's that?
Well, they're looking for FCC to put out a call for deregulation.
Yes.
Suggestions. So maybe, why don't you get rid of the rule that says you can't link GMRS repeaters?
Yeah.
I see.
Or if we just put the original ARRL process into our everyday, where we are an actual relay again. Because originally, they would have a relay that would be able to talk from New York to California. And you would sit at your house, at your location, at a certain time and date, and you would be in that relay. And they knew that if New York wanted to contact California, you would get to this guy on this date time.
Yep.
This guy knew he would get to the next relay station.
But we're all too busy chasing DX today for that.
Yeah. See, it was a mid-range DX that they did, because you would go from maybe one state to another.
Yep.
To get a connection from New York to California.
You step back, sir. So I just wanted to address the GMRS thing I just quickly spoke about. I mean, GMRS has its place. I don't know. I have a GMRS license. I don't talk on it, but when it comes to this type of stuff, I think it could be very useful.
But from what you observed and participated in, any sense of how prominent GMRS?
There was only one GMRS repeater that I know of that was live during the storm and after the storm. All the others in that area went down. And Randy, the owner of the Mount Mitchell repeater, put up a GMRS repeater shortly after in the Mount Mitchell area, just because he sees the value in communication. You know, Randy's a really nice guy. I've had the pleasure of meeting him twice now. And I just can't speak enough good things about that man. Very, very willing to help. And, you know, he's had a very good career, so he's got some of the funding to do that, you know. Just a very, very nice man.
I tried to use GMRS because my wife goes up to the barn where we keep our horses. And the cell service isn't really that good from New Salem to Marshville. Now it is, they've got some more cell towers, but I could not get an antenna high enough to get to her in New Salem from my house in Marshville.
Gotcha. Okay.
The GMRS failed.
Check your wattage on your radio. I'll comment for Christmas.
5 watts.
Okay.
And they say,
That's
you know,
max.
you can get 30 miles, but
No.
you gotta have 30 miles.
Peak to peak.
On a cold day. I mentioned my daughter lives up in Asheville. All 4 of my kids now have a Midland GMRS radio, 3 watts only, and a little Baofeng. So they're using my GMRS license right now. Hopefully they'll get their
Which is completely legal. It's good for, yep. Yep.
right. Hopefully they'll be working on their ham radio licenses.
Good.
Dan, thank you very much. That
Thank you.
was very educational. Appreciate everybody, all of the questions, and
It's nice to have interaction like that. When I did this in Hamcation, we had a large tent that we were in. And, you know, there were 3 or 4 other people that helped during Hurricane Milton. So it wasn't just me, it was others. So it was kind of nice to sit down and just talk about, you know, Hurricane Helene here.
awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
How many were on this?